Hi, I'm Sophia State, and this is the absolute state of the research. Today I'm talking about two Netflix animated programs that I'm quite fond of, and I'll be talking about their transformation of their bodies in the context of Donna Haraway's Thylacine. Donna Haraway's Thylacine is populated in a multi-critter romp by the Chthonic ones, those who make and unmake, those of unruly hair, beings of the earth. They are inseparable from their relationships. They make one another and are made by one another. The Anthropocene and the Capitalocene, she writes, are attempts to exterminate these chthonic ones. In my paper today, I propose that girlhood metamorphosis is entwined with the fear and the hope of the Thylacine. The girl heroines of the two animated texts I'll examine embrace metamorphosis, wildness, and failure. Their bodies are in flux, chthonic. I'm going to be talking about animated, fictional girls changing bodies today. But before diving into the texts, I just want to establish a little extra textual context around girls' bodies and change. The idea that girls are while boys do remains remarkably resilient. And similarly, girls' bodily changes are often constructed as and linked to passivity. Studies have shown a correlation between breast development and decreased physical activity, and also between early puberty and lower enjoyment of physical activity. And I will put the references for these studies at the end of the slide, end of the presentation. The experience of a changing body in puberty is linked to a discourse of vulnerability, sadness, and perhaps even madness. As Catherine Driscoll points out, the hysterical girl of the turn-of-century psychology is an important precursor to the deviant girl who appeared in much social psychology in the middle decades of the 20th century. Mary Pfeiffer's Reviving Ophelia, 1994, argues that at puberty, girls feel pressured to split their true selves from the selves they think others expect of them, becoming disoriented and depressed. And Laurie Penny, writing 20 years later, says that adolescence for a woman is the slow realization that you are not considered as fully human as you had hoped. You are a body first. That's from Unspeakable Things. The concept of a feminine adolescence emerged as a way of disciplining this period of transition, Driscoll argues. In the two animated Netflix series I'm talking about today, She-Ra and the Princesses of Power and Kipo and the Age of Wonder Beasts, we see a very different representation of girls' bodily metamorphoses. In these programs, bodily transformations are agental, pleasurable, and a source of power, and above all, they take place in communities of human and non-human kin, not privately, shamefully, and secretly. She-Ra is made up of 5 seasons, released on Netflix from 2018 to 2020, and it's a reboot of the 1985 to 1987 Filmation series, She-Ra, the Princess of Power. She-Ra, Princess of Power. The series is set on a fantastical planet called Etheria, populated by both humans and various fantasy creatures, including the magic-using princesses. Protagonist Adora is a Horde soldier, fighting as part of an interplanetary invasion force against the princess resistance at the start of the show. After becoming lost in the woods, she finds a sword, which creates a psychic link to a hologram named Lighthope. Lighthope tells Adora how to use the sword to transform into She-Ra, a powerful warrior. And for copyright reasons, I won't be able to show the whole of this clip.
That's me.
So Adora's first metamorphosis is unexpected and unwanted, but it's also life-saving. It enables her to save herself from a giant cyborg spider. Adora journeys from experiencing this metamorphosis as something that happens to her to it becoming something that she can control and use.
Just me.
Adora is guided in this journey by a hologram called Light Hope, an elderly witch named Madame Raz, a winged unicorn named Swift Wind, and supported by a range of human and non-human friends and allies. And her relationship with Light Hope is particularly important to the development of control over her metamorphosis and its consequences. Light Hope is a synthetic life form created to train and oversee the She-Ras on their mission. She journeyed to Etheria with the previous She-Ra, Mara, and after Mara's death, transported baby Adora through a portal to serve as the new She-Ra. But instead, baby Adora was taken and raised by the Horde. Mara is initially described to Adora as mad, out of control, and a failure. Over the course of the program, however, Adora discovers that Mara had refused to carry out her mission to convert Etheria into a weapon, instead using the planet to protect its inhabitants. Instead hiding the planet to protect it and its inhabitants. Jack Halberstam writes that failure allows us to escape the punishing norms that discipline behaviour and manage human development, with the goal of delivering us from unruly childhoods to orderly and predictable adulthoods. Mad, emotional and out of control Mara's failure to be disciplined and orderly, to comply with her superior's commands, saved countless lives. Her failure to separate herself from the planet, her failure to treat it as a tool, her lack of discipline align her not with the anthropos or capital, but with the chthonic. During their time together, Mara and Light Hope have developed a relationship, and Mara's treatment of Light Hope as a person rather than as a computer led to Light Hope's forcible reprogramming by their superiors. At a crucial moment, the traces of these erased memories and feelings for Mara are enough for Light Hope to help Adora defy her predetermined purpose and save Etheria. Adora, unlike Mara, fails to see herself as external to Etheria, but instead comes to understand herself as part of Etheria. Kipo and the Age of Wonder Beasts has 3 seasons, all released by Netflix in 2020, and it's based on a 2015 webcomic. Set in the distant future, Kipo imagines a world dominated by mega-mutes, mute here short for mutant, gigantic sentient creatures mutated from animals and divided into warring subculture/species factions such as the K-pop narwhals, the dubstep bees and the mod frogs. Humans cannot survive on the mega-mute-dominated surface and have been driven underground, where they live in the ruins of old subway networks they call burrows. Protagonist Kipo is suddenly thrust up to the surface when her burrow is destroyed, and in her journey to try and find her father, discovers that she is transforming into a mega-jaguar, and a pink mega-jaguar. Unlike She-Ra, Kipo explicitly links the metamorphosis to puberty. Kipo's first experience of metamorphosis occurs on her 13th birthday.
Roller coaster! It was like something else was in control.
Kipo! What happened to your arm?
My arm? Ah! What's wrong with my arm? It's all furry! Benson, why is my arm all furry?
I know sometimes girls your age go through changes, although that's a pretty big change.
Like Adora, Kipo moves from experiencing metamorphosis as something that happens to her, to controlling and harnessing her powers of transformation. And she's supported by a cast of both human and non-human allies, and guided to control her metamorphosis in a hilariously parodic training sequence, guided by 3 mystical nanny goats. They are seers who scry via cheese. These goats teach Kipo a herbs in, herbs out cheese making exercise to help her take control over her metamorphosis. Now, increasingly elaborate transformation sequences have been part of the magical girl genre of Japanese animation since the 1970s. These scenes are both enjoyable and practical. Repetitive use of the same scene in different episodes reduces the amount of original animation required, which is an important consideration in a notoriously underpaid industry. I don't think it's an overstatement to say that all contemporary animation is influenced by anime, and the difference in the transformation sequences between the original 80s She-Ra and the recent reboot really show how strong anime's influence has become.
For the honor of Grayskull! Shiva, Shiva. Shiva. I am She-Ra!
It's not just a stylistic influence. We can actually see how the focus on the body itself is much clearer in the more recent version, although I've shown you a slightly truncated clip there for copyright reasons. The 1980s clip, the main movement happens in the light around her and her outfit changes, but her body itself remains mostly still. The rebooted version is much closer to the anime standard in highlighting changes to various parts of her body in order, in showing her body in motion, and in giving particular emphasis to the explosion of suddenly unruly hair. In her contrastive study of Disney's Little Mermaid and Studio Ghibli's Ponyo on the Cliff by the Sea, Lucy Fraser writes that Ponyo's metamorphosis is purposeful and gleeful. Her mermaid's tail is not penetrated or painfully split open. Instead, Ponyo modifies her own body to suit her purposes. The Little Mermaid skips over Ariel's metamorphosis, giving just 10 seconds to her first transformation and concealing her second beneath a long dress. Her final metamorphosis isn't shown at all. In contrast to Ponyo, Ariel can only gain the body she wants through her father's power, and the metamorphosis is a means to an end. Ponyo, surrounded and supported here by her sisters, seems to enjoy the metamorphosis itself. Fraser writes, Ghibli's hand-drawn, ever-changing animation values nature as part of a feminized cooperative world, where female characters seem to transform and sometimes meld with the ocean around them. The Disney film, on the other hand, uses cartoon techniques of exaggeration, but generally presents more realistic imagery of bodies that are delineated from their surroundings. And Haraway, of course, draws on another Ghibli film often, Nausicaa of the Valley of the Wind, when conceptualizing the thylacine. She-Ra's transformation scene demonstrates the Japanese stylistic influence, and the story itself has much in common with Ponyo's feminized cooperative world of transformation and indistinct boundaries. In both She-Ra and Kipo, the girls' physical changes and quest to understand and take control of these changes are essential plot drivers. They and their allies spend dozens of episodes thinking and talking about their bodies, experimenting with metamorphosis, and pushing themselves to their physical limits. Transformations that are initially involuntary and frightening become purposeful and pleasurable. This narrative focus on and enjoyment of the physical is in stark contrast to broader social attitudes towards girls' correct relationships with their bodies. Real girls who focus on their own bodies are likely to be considered vain and shallow, self-objectifying, and probably at risk of eating disorders. As Driscoll points out, too much focus on the body is widely considered unhealthy for girls. Kipo and Adora's metamorphosizing bodies are important because of what the girls want to be able to do with them. Their bodies are part of a larger community in a very literal sense, forming links between conflicting forces. Kipo is both a human and a mega mute, and her unique body points the way to a cooperative future. Adora is Eternian by birth, Horde by upbringing, and Etherian by choice. The two programs diverge here at the issue of choice, and I'm interested in the way these stories have their otherwise extraordinarily agental girls set upon their respective paths by the choices of others. Kipo's transformation is a result of her parents' genetic experimentation, and it's something that she never questions or resents. Kipo does exactly what her parents had hoped she would do, forging a connection between the human and the non-human. Adora makes a different choice, pushing back against many of the expectations others have for her, complying with some, and ultimately forging a path that differs from that set out for her. Neither girl has any choice in the circumstances that lead to their metamorphoses, but their stories are an exploration of what they choose to make of what they've been given. The ultimate direction of their paths are influenced as much by their making of kin as by the intentions of those who created them, however. In Staying with the Trouble, Haraway asks, what must be cut and what must be tied if multi-species flourishing on Earth, including human and other than human beings in kinship, are to have a chance? She-Ra and Kipo each offers an answer to this question, centered on the metamorphosizing bodies of their respective girl heroes. The first cut in both programs is with an anthropocentric worldview. The humans Kipo grew up with want to eradicate the mega mutes, returning humans to exclusive control of the surface. She chooses instead to build a human-mute alliance, Hamufa. As She-Ra, Adora is supposed to harness the magical power of Etheria as a weapon capable of destroying worlds, but instead she comes to understand herself as indivisibly connected to Etheria. In both stories, it is human and other than human making kin that facilitates flourishing. The girls learn to control their metamorphoses with the help of their other than human kin, choosing community over individualism and the unruly over the disciplined. Metamorphosis, according to Marina Warner, disrupts the apprehensible world in order to open spaces for dreaming alternatives. Adora and Kipo metamorphosize into not entirely human bodies, and because of these metamorphoses, they are able to bridge previously irreconcilable differences between warring factions, and between the human and the other than human. As Haraway writes, we require each other in unexpected collaborations and combinations, in hot compost piles. We become with each other, or not at all. The spaces Adora and Kipo's metamorphoses open for dreaming alternatives are interspecies spaces that embrace cooperation and melding with the environment rather than pursuing mastery over it. The girls take pleasure in their changing bodies and they share that pleasure communally. To quote Haraway again, living with and dying with each other, potentially, in the Thylacine, can be a fierce reply to the dictates of both anthropos and capital. Adora and Kipo's purposeful metamorphoses, supported by their human and other than human kin, allow them to create and dream a chthonic future. And as promised, here are the references.